Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'd now like to declare the 80th Ordinary Annual General Meeting of the Racehorse Owners Association officially open. Thank you all for joining us at the Queen's Club London. I'm Louise Norman, Chief Executive of the Racehorse Owners Association, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here today. The meeting will begin with the formal AGM, which will be followed by the President's speech, and then we will dedicate the remainder of the meeting for questions and answers. I'd like to thank those members who have submitted questions in advance of this meeting, and we hope that the talking points will cover some of those topics raised. We will now move on swiftly to the official procedures of the meeting and the resolutions to approve. The notice convening this meeting is set out on page 3 of the annual report, which has been circulated to all members. For the purposes of this meeting, it is taken as read. We will deal with the items set out in the annual report under the notice of meeting. As in previous years, and according to best corporate practice, I will announce the proxy vote after each resolution. I would also like to remind you that in accordance with the ROA's Articles of Association, 2 of today's resolutions are ordinary resolutions and therefore simply require a majority vote, and 1, a special resolution, requires 75% of the vote. Item 1, to confirm and adopt by way of ordinary resolution the report and financial statements for the year ended 31st of March 2024. We will now conduct a vote in the room. Please raise your hands if you are in favour of Resolution 1. Thank you. Now please raise your hands if you are against Resolution 1. Thank you. We have received 36 proxy forms supporting Resolution 1 and 5 against. Based on the votes in the room and the proxy forms received, I declare the resolution carried. Item 2, to appoint by way of ordinary resolution RSM UK Audit LLP as the company's auditors to hold office with immediate effect to the end of the next period for the appointing auditors under Section 485(2) of the Companies Act 2006, at a remuneration to be determined by the directors. We will now conduct a vote in the room. Please raise your hands if you are in favour of Resolution 2. Thank you. Now please raise your hands if you are against Resolution 2. Thank you. We have received 36 proxy forms supporting Resolution 2 and 5 against. Based on the votes in the room and the proxy forms received, I declare the resolution carried. Item 3, to approve by way of special resolution that with effect from the conclusion of this meeting, the draft Articles of Association produced to the meeting and in the form available on our website be adopted as the Articles of Association of the company in substitution for and to the exclusion of the company's existing Articles of Association. We will now conduct a vote in the room. Please raise your hands if you are in favour of Resolution 3. Thank you. Now please raise your hands if you are against Resolution 3. Thank you. We have received 35 proxy forms supporting Resolution 3 and 6 against. Based on the votes in the room and the proxy forms received, I declare the resolution carried. So that concludes the formal part of the meeting. Thank you very much, and I would now like to pass over to our President, Charlie Parker, to address the meeting.
Thank you, Louise. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for those who have joined us here at the Queen's Club and to the members online who can catch up later. I'd like to start by thanking Ken McGarity, a fellow director who's sitting at the table up there, who is stepping down today after 9 years of service to the association. Ken first joined the ROA as our Scottish representative, and he was subsequently co-opted formally onto the board. Ken told us a story just before he came into the room that when he was persuaded by Richard Wayman, our previous chief executive, to join and take over as the Scottish rep, they offered him two choices. He could be the Scottish representative and not be on the board, or he could be co-opted onto the board as a full director. The only difference between the two, other than the fiduciary duty, was that as a full director at the time, he wouldn't have been able to claim expenses. So being a true Scot, he chose the former. He has led the audit committee of the ROA and has recently been central to the negotiations around the PRIS and jockey remuneration. He has made a fantastic contribution to all aspects of our association, and we are truly sorry to see him go. And we wish him the very best in retirement and lots of winners.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
The past year has seen the launch of the Premier Race Day product, along with a number of other changes designed to enhance the product, enhance viewer engagement and attendance figures. These changes were a result of an industry-wide strategy project and have been driven by the team at the BHA. It was a fair criticism that after we emerged from COVID, there was no real plan in place to promote and grow the industry. We, like other sports and businesses, were faced with a very different landscape of rising costs, decreasing investment, reduction in crowds, and we needed to do something to arrest what was seen as a gradual decline. The positive news was that previous entrenched positions were put aside, and all participants and race courses were able to come together and produce the strategy. What has perhaps been overlooked is that this is a 2-year trial, and lessons and learnings need to be taken from what impact these changes and initiatives are having. It was clear from the outset that there was and is a far bigger opportunity to grow and promote our sport on a global level. It's a truism that Rome wasn't built in a day, and there has been recognition of this in the culminating in 2 significant new projects that are underway well before the original trial has even reached the halfway stage. We needed a far better insight into our customers, be they owners, racing fans, attendees, punters, or even breeders. We need to understand our demographic and learn how to engage with new audience who do not watch terrestrial TV or even read newspapers. We need to open up pathways into all elements of our sport. And above all, we need to make use of the data that exists within the various silos, but is not yet coordinated. I am pleased that there is a significant project on the launch pad to give us the tools to open up these pathways. Focusing on the owners, which is why we're here today, it has finally been agreed that a dedicated owner services facility will be coordinated by the ROA. Focusing on a working relationship between the ROA, BHA and the racecourses, and using proper data at its heart, the aim is to recognise and reward the investments made by all owners, whatever stake they may have in the horse that they own. It seems such an obvious aspect of our customer retention, but I can testify that it has taken a very long time to reach agreement across the various interests. The ROA is here to look after its members, but it also represents all owners and investors in the industry. This new collaboration will allow the team to work closely with racecourses to really begin to deliver enhanced race day experiences, and the recognition that owners should receive given their investment and commitment to our sport. The second project is looking at how can the current buoyant appetite for global sports investment be aligned with our world-famous, internationally known racing product. There has been a widely held view that there is true potential to supercharge the existing inward investment, whether that is through sponsorship, packaged media rights, or even a reshaping of our racing product itself. We have seen over the last 6 years significant growth of the world pool races, which are in essence tapping into huge betting markets who have great interest in betting on British racing. There may not be a silver bullet, but it is incumbent on us to explore the opportunity. We need to grow the cake and not just squabble about who gets what share of a decreasing pie. Currently, the industry finances are in an extraordinary position. No business has a completely clear picture of their future revenues and costs, but most can be fairly sure of where they are and budget accordingly. Racing does not have that luxury or control. Buyers at the late summer and autumn yearling sales do not have a clarity on what prize money will be in 2025 and beyond. Basically, it is an amalgamation of what's left at the levy, what owners contribute and what racecourses voluntarily contribute. The BHA itself is primarily funded by owners and by racecourses to the tune of 40 million plus. The racecourse funding via fees per fixture are in the most part funded by grants from the levy board. Given that the BHA has some long-term large commitments, i.e. the Weatherby's contract, drug testing arrangements, and a large headcount, it is difficult to quickly change the overall cost base of the BHA. The first call on levy funds will be the funding through racecourses of the BHA, therefore. The 2024-25 levy year has apparently started worryingly behind last year. A combination of bad weather, the European football, and affordability checks are the likely prime suspects to what has been a disappointing start to their financial year. The levy's largest funding is of prize money. However, given that the BHA has first call to balance its own books, there is genuine uncertainty as to the level of funding into prize money for 2025. In addition, there are a number of other mouths to feed continues to grow. Obviously, we have the essential projects that I described earlier, but we also have the industry people work, equine welfare, and the Horse Welfare Board itself. We also have the ongoing Racing Digital project, and of course, the marketing of the sport itself. The BHA has several crucial projects on the blocks, but in essence, they do not know if they have the budget to be able to deliver. This is a short-term and haphazard way to run any business. The inability to take long-term strategic decisions and to be able to deal with short-term issues greatly inhibits our ability to grow and the BHA's ability to lead. It is crucial, therefore, that the much-discussed and documented levy reform is put back on the political agenda as soon as possible. The levy in real terms has fallen since 2018 due to inflation and, of course, other factors such as affordability checks. The review that was scheduled to have been concluded by April 24 was in essence scuppered by the early election call. It would have delivered a significant uplift in funding. It was also proposed to form a guaranteed floor, similar to levy versions of the past, which would have given some comfort to the levy board itself around its own reserves policy and its investments decisions. The BHA and the industry group that works closely with them must now deliver a revised deal as soon as possible, or we risk seeing real impact upon prize money and an inability to make any progress on the areas that must be delivered. Up to 2018, the vast majority of racecourses, I think all but one, were signed up to prize money agreements. Whilst not bulletproof, they provided a guaranteed percentage of media rights income to be channeled into executive contributions, i.e. prize money. The agreements continued to be adhered to by racecourses after their expiry, whilst new deals were negotiated. However, when COVID struck in 2020, the RCA made it clear that those agreements were no longer applicable. Since 2020, there has been no mechanism, other than minimum values, to share in the revenues that are being generated by horses running at racecourses. Whilst on the one hand, we are all working together to promote the new strategy and initiatives and are immersed in the next phase, we still do not have the mechanism that guarantees a share of any increased revenues will find their way into prize money. Work continues on partnership agreements that will ease some of the tension that has built up around this issue, and hopefully allow everyone to benefit should the tide start to rise again. But it is essential that we align our interests, racecourses and owners, so that the opportunities that we can see are realised. Moving on to the association itself, I would like to reference this morning's announcement that owners' contributions to the Professional Riders Insurance Scheme will be reduced for a period of 18 months, resulting in a saving to owners of over £2.25 million. The scheme itself had built up large and unnecessary reserves, and as a direct result of the work done by a working group of ROA directors, some of whom are sitting at the table, we have been able to achieve this small but important breakthrough. There are a number of other areas where owners' costs have been looked at, but the frustration in the delays to the rollout of the new racing digital owners software has inhibited any real progress in this area. Owners are often just seen as the funding option for holes in budgets, and the number of fees and charges that appear on our Weatherby statements can be both bewildering and quickly add up. The argument that as a proportion of the costs of buying the horse or even training it, the fees and charges are a fraction do not wash. It is often the straw that breaks the camel's back, and action on these costs is long overdue. Turning to our financial results for 2024, whilst recording a loss is not ideal, there are some positive highlights. Membership levels have stabilised since the much publicised losses suffered after COVID. The VAT Solutions business is trending in the right direction, and the overheads and wages line have seen some significant savings. We are now seeing monthly cash generation, and whilst we still must make a success of the ROA Awards night, the prospects for 24-25 are positive. As you may know, in the last few months, the ROA has overhauled its executive function, and we have already seen some very positive progress as a result. The ROA team continues to represent owners' views, ensuring that your voice is heard across all parts of the industry on behalf of all owners, regardless of their level of investment and involvement. British racing is facing some well-known and documented challenges. However, we do have a huge opportunity here to secure the sport for the future if we can work together and deliver it. Finally, I'd look forward to seeing many of you at the aforementioned ROA Awards on the 12th of December at the Royal Lancaster Hotel. It's always one of the best nights of the year. And to celebrate those horses that have lit up the track this year. Sadly, I don't think any of mine will be nominated. Now, I'd like to hand over to Ella, who will share some key talking points and lead our Q&A discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all joining us today. With the formalities of the AGM now complete, we'll move on to the key talking points that are relevant to all ROA members. Following this, we'll open the floor up for a Q&A session to answer any questions that you all may have. Firstly, we'll delve into ROA Finance, where we'll discuss the current financial status and strategic initiatives for the future. Ken, the financial statements for the year that ended on the 31st of March 2024 show a significant loss and an overall decrease in net assets. Could you please explain the main factors that contributed to these financial results and explain the steps that the ROA is taking to improve its financial stability moving forward?
Well, like all finance, let's get the bad news out of the way first. Brackets again at the end of this year, but better than the previous year. There'll be few of us in this room that have not been impacted by what's happened in the last few years in the world, whether it be Putin's decision to invade Ukraine, COVID coming after that, and a cost of living crisis that nobody ever had really envisaged. During that period, we've seen member income, number of members that we've had also falling, really because of the cost of living crisis, and therefore the leisure pound that everybody's had being squeezed and spread over other matters. We then decided to look at other forms of bringing in income, and that's when we came up with the idea of introducing the VAT Solutions business. And that has grown over the last 3 years and helped to deal with the reduction that we've had in member income. We've tried to reduce our costs, both staff and overheads, in line with that. It's a people organisation, and therefore staff costs are going to be very significant. And therefore we did that during 23-24 and saved, clearly we're £140,000 better than we were the year before, but it wasn't good enough. And as we moved into 24-25, we realised that more strategic and more significant action needed to be taken. And hence we've had the executive management restructure. And that will show us savings effectively from July onwards in the current financial year and for a full year following after that. We will continue, as Charlie has said, to grow the VAT solution business. And Louise is conducting a root and branch review of the costs. And interestingly, we have brought back in our finance director from a couple of years ago, Steve Hatcher, who's joining us on a part-time basis to help do that because he's got a solid knowledge of the business. We've also heard the owner services mentioned, and that will give us a line in to try and contacting lapsed members or any non-registered owners to try and join the ROA. And we're also looking at membership tiers to try and bring in more people within the fold of our organisation. As far as 24-25 is concerned, well, I mentioned that our staff and overhead costs from July onwards are reduced. July and August have shown a surplus in both months. And therefore, once we do a reforecast in October for the rest of the year, the aim is to get back to a break-even position and then build up the reserves of the ROA into the future. So in summary, we've obviously, like many other organisations and businesses, suffered from the impact of global factors and factors in the UK and the industry as well, with affordability checks and the difficulties over funding. The introduction of premierisation, which for a lot of our members who are involved in core has perhaps in the short term been a bit of a down player as well. So therefore, we're looking forward to trying getting things right, getting rid of those brackets for the 24-25 year and build the ROA's finances up into the future in 25-26 onwards.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ken. Although Celia, the owner's representative for the ROR, couldn't be with us today, we are fortunate enough to have Mouse Hamilton-Fairley with us, who represents owners on the BHA Equine Safety Steering Group. Mouse, could you please now share with us the latest initiatives and successes in equine welfare?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Firstly, I just want to say that the ROA is keen to make its own contribution on your behalf, on the members' behalf, to improving racing's social licence, and obviously equine welfare sits at the very heart of this. With regards to my role as your representative on the Equine Safety Group, this is an industry-wide group set up to monitor all aspects of British horse racing that involve equine safety, to consider any matters that might be referred to us and make recommendations to the appropriate industry bodies. We've looked at 2 reports so far which cover falls, fatalities and long-term injuries, and we're hoping to be in a position to make recommendations based on that information from the reports at our upcoming meeting next month. And we've agreed as a group to initially focus on making recommendations to reduce the number of fallers in jump racing. Whilst we've been analysing the jump risk review model, which some of you will be aware of has been around for a long time, but now it's been updated, and hopefully a set of fresh eyes to look at it, we can come up with some good proposals coming out of it. But we're also expecting to review a flat race risk review model, I can't get the words out, by the end of the year. We're very keen to become more proactive, and I think we need to be more proactive in racing in this area and not just end up as another industry-wide discussion group that doesn't really achieve anything. We're ably chaired by James Given, who I'm sure most of you know as the BHA vet and ex-trainer. And we also have the expert help of Mike Etherington-Smith, who's well known in eventing circles. He was brought on board to improve that sport safety record after a spate of human deaths. And I'm very hopeful that some concrete and worthwhile proposals will be forthcoming over the next few months from this group. As far as equine welfare and the retraining of racehorses is concerned, their new strategy was adopted by the industry this year, and you can find that on their all details of the strategy on the website. I'd just like to point out, and Celia highlighted for me, the third line of the strategy is what they call their vulnerable horse scheme. And surprisingly in racing, it has experienced a considerable underspend on its budget. It doesn't happen very often, but that does go to show how successful basically the rest of the strategy is, how well it's working, because they haven't needed to dip into those funds to save animals in distress. I think we all know and recognise the importance of getting this right, not just within the industry, but to people looking at us from the outside. And I'd also like to highlight the Horses for Courses scheme, which has been kindly sponsored by Godolphin, and I think has been a success with the level of engagement from people on the courses, and also press and social media coverage that hasn't just come from our own press, it's come from outside as well, which I think is very important. And just on a personal note, literally this Monday, I got a text from a girl who took over a horse of my mother's, an incredibly expensive Dubai purchase that managed to win a race at Wolverhampton eventually. But we had him retrained, but he went to a local event rider who retrained him and passed him on, and we got a very excited text from a girl, and she'd just been placed at the recent Royal International Horse Show at the XL at the weekend, and was absolutely thrilled. And we want more of that, and it is out there and it is happening. And yes, I think that if you want a success, that is one of them. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mouse. In 2023, the industry strategy via the Commercial Committee committed to delivering various changes designed to deliver more competitive racing and boost the sport's appeal. Charlie, with the 2024 fixture list and learnings now complete, can you please outline the key understandings to date and how they were to inform the delivery of the 2025 fixture list?
Well, obviously the trial's still ongoing, and a lot of the data is difficult to interpret, given the circumstances around affordability, about the decline in the economic output. But there has been some highlights. Certainly clearing the Saturday afternoon window looks like a real positive in terms of betting turnover, obviously against a declining market, and fan engagement. So there are some big highlights, and but also Core has struggled in terms of prize money. We know we took 1.7 million from Core and redistributed it to Premier Racing, and there has been some impacts there. But in essence, so far this year, the field sizes have been up, and that informed the policy for next year. And what was pleasing was that eventually racing reached 100% agreement about what we should be doing for 2025 within the context of the trial. It was slightly disappointing that some of those people that signed up for that then went into the press and criticised the 2025 fixture list. But in essence, at the table, it was 100%. I think the main thing is that this is a trial. We are learning stuff, but we need to take it forward. We need to really see what's working, but also look at that real international market. What really would be attractive to significantly increase the size of the cake, to increase that investment, and somehow redefine that product. And I think that's where we can really grow our business and grow our industry. We're obviously about to launch a project that will help us define what sort of income streams might be available, what sort of sponsorship, whether it's packaged media rights, etc. But that will obviously be 26, 27. For 25, we are where we are. Hopefully the economy will bounce back and we'll get a clearer picture of what's worked. But I would say, from the information that the BHA have compiled so far and the analysis of that certainly the Saturday afternoon, making that a clear betting, viewing picture with ITV as an absolute cornerstone of it, that is something that we can say has worked.
And another recurring theme that we found in the pre-submitted questions, which is obviously of great importance to all owners, concerns prize money. Charlie, can you now explain what the ROA is doing to increase prize money levels for all winning connections?
Yeah, so obviously it's two-pronged. Well, it's three-pronged. Previous answer, grow the pie. That is absolutely vital. obviously the levy debate and did not satisfy where we wanted to be, but we need to go back there and make sure that review is back on the table, and hopefully we can achieve where we were, which would significantly increase the levy, which would give them the flexibility to use more money for prize money. And critically, I think we need to align with the racecourses through some form of commercial partnership, commercial agreement, where the stuff we're doing as an industry can help all parties, and we can see a clear flow of that money into prize money. So, and we are working with our colleagues in the Thoroughbred group around that piece of work. So it's really three-pronged, but I do think if there's a message, it's we've got to look outside our own little squabbles, and we've got to look at really increasing the revenues into the sport, and we need to increase the participants and the punters and the viewers and the racegoers. And one of the things that British racing has not done to date, as well as it should, is to look at what happens in the next 10 to 20 years and look at the different demographics and how do we engage with people who currently at the moment do not access their media, their interests through the mediums that we do as people of my age and above and below, because they don't watch the telly, they don't read newspapers, they don't even look at Twitter or X or whatever it is. So it's not it's something that we are totally aware of, the sort of digital transformation of the demographic, but we really need to get on top of it, because we might win the argument about inward international investment, but if we don't have a healthy, growing audience to support the day-to-day, if I may be so bold, then we will be in trouble.
Perfect, thank you, Charlie. Given that we have heard what the ROA is doing with owners in relation to increase and improve prize money, many owners have also been in touch regarding issues surrounding rising costs. Stephen, could you now please explain how the ROA is working towards reducing the owners' costs and making the sport fair and equitable on all owners?
Yes, I'll certainly try. Thank you, Anna. Just a quick reprise of what you get for joining the ROA. I mean, you're all members. The racecourse badge scheme, we all know, is a way of reducing your costs when you go racing. And third-party liability insurance for your horse, if it damages property or if it kicks somebody, can also step in there. What's less than known is the race cancellation insurance. So if your horse doesn't run because the meeting's cancelled after the first race, then you will get compensated by the ROA to the tune of £100, which hopefully covers some of the box costs. Also, in collaboration with Licets, we've come up with the Racehorse Owners Compensation Scheme, where your horse is injured, it'll pay for vet costs. Where your horse is killed, it will give you the value of the horse. This requires an extra premium to be paid to yourselves, minimum of £500. Obviously, the more you want the insurance for, the more you would have to pay. But that's something that sometimes slips under the radar when people are looking at the benefits of the ROA. Now we come to one of my pet peeves, BHA registration costs and renewal fees. I don't really have a problem with paying registration costs. I just don't understand why a click of the mouse costs so much every year when we want to have our colours renewed or when we want to re-register our trainers. And this is something that the BHA have agreed to look at. They have a review coming, and we need to make sure that we put a proposal to the BHA which will ensure that that sum of money is reduced, because it all mounts up, and it's money for old rope, basically. And now we move on to the Owners Working Group. The Owners Working Group is a vehicle driven by my learned friend Mouse Hamilton-Fairley, who carries a few of us as passengers, just to back her up. I think, to a certain extent, my first point has rather been usurped, because the cat came out of the bag this morning with regard to the Professional Riders Insurance Scheme, whereby At the moment, today, if you hired a flat jockey, his fee would be her fee would be £163. But the extra money that we pay into their insurance scheme bumps that up to £181. And for jump jockeys, because they get paid more, it goes from £221 to £245. So that's time every time one of your horses runs, that's what you're paying into the fund of the jockeys. Now, that fund built up a large excess, but thanks to people like Ken, who was on this from the word go, and our colleague Mark Alban, who's not here today, we have proposed a reduction from 11% down to 1%. So instead of putting 11% on a jockey's fee to cover their insurance, it's 1%. And then we will look at that again in a year's time just to see that it's working okay, because the pot that's currently there would probably last for at least that long with just a 1% contribution. And as has already been said by Charlie, £2.25 million of your money is effectively being returned to you, because we now no longer will be paying 11%, we'll be paying 1% with effect from August the 1st. So with your first runner... October the 1st, sorry. With your first runner after October the 1st, just have a drink on us and we'll take it from there. In addition to these, not strictly speaking a cost saving, but we know that the problems that owners have been having with Weatherby's Bank usually linked to extra fees and sort of intrusive requirements to produce ID and what have you. We are also working on that, and we would hope to get some more satisfaction out of Weatherby's than we have to date. Racing Digital has already been mentioned by Charlie as a project which has been delayed and delayed. The latest date is late November. That's not a promise, but it's certainly the plan. And from that point, it'll be streamlining the whole ownership process in many ways. It will also enable us to get greater information so we can, in the future, address the problems of a wider range of owners, because we'll have the data at our hand. So that just about concludes the cost saving. It's something that is certainly in my head all the time, and the owners working group have been working on this, and you've seen already some of the advantages that have been granted to us as a result of the hard work that people like Ken and Mark and Mouse have put into this project.
Thank you, Stephen. Unfortunately, Tom Goff is unable to be with us today. However, he has kindly provided his insights on the yearling markets and related topics. We appreciate his efforts in sharing his valuable perspective, despite not being here in person. Now, let's dive into Tom Goff's analysis and his thoughts on the current state of the yearling markets. Considering the challenges that it currently faces, the yearling market has so far been remarkably resilient in 2024. In the USA, the two main sales in Saratoga and Keeneland were both very strong, which obviously reflects the underlying strength of the US economy. In Europe, things, however, have been slightly tougher, with sales in France and the UK slightly down compared to last year. Goff's and Tattersalls' major yearling sales are both scheduled for the coming weeks, and I expect Tattersalls Book 1 to uphold pretty well at the top level, but it's entirely possible that Goff's and Tattersalls Book 2 and 3 sales could face more challenges in the middle and lower market areas, reflecting potentially reduced demand in those sectors. Tom's observations provide a comprehensive overview on the current market dynamics, highlighting the regional variances and economic influences impacting yearling sales. His expectations for Tattersalls Book 1 to perform well at the top level suggest that there remains strong interest in investment at the higher end of the market. However, the caution regarding Goff's and Tattersalls Books 2 and 3 sales points to a more selective demand, particularly in the middle and lower market segments. Now, let's turn our attention to racehorse owners, who are obviously critical to our sport, and I'd like to now pass over to ROA CEO Louise Norman, who will continue to expand on the developments that are being undertaken to deliver the owner's mandate throughout British racing.
Thank you, Ella. We know that racehorse owners are the lifeblood of the sport, without whom no other component or provider in British racing would or could operate. It really is essential for us to ensure that our belief that the owner is the key participant in the sport is understood and appreciated at all levels. For the ROA, we now look to mandate the way in which we will create change for owners based on the needs now and in the future. We should be known as the owner stakeholder first and foremost, with the ability to create solutions and collaborate across the industry to drive, develop and protect owners and the sport for future years, creating the correct levels of recognition and reward. With owners playing a critical role, their voice must not be overlooked or taken for granted. The ROA is now set to drive this mandate and build the support from within across all ownership models, ensuring critical communications and active listening leads to positive change. We're dedicated to delivering this mandate with the support and engagement from all racehorse owners. Building cohesive momentum and central strength will maximise and amplify the owner's voice at the central discussion platforms of British racing. We understand and identify that ownership is diverse, which has certainly evolved over the last 10 years, with the needs of owners definitely reflecting a more varied level of advocacy and engagement. This needs to be recognised and rewarded from the owner's perspective. In any other part of life, customer-centric businesses are rapidly moving forward, using key customer data, insights and technology to profile their needs in order to deliver bespoke and customer-driven activities, which create value for the customer. Racehorse ownership shouldn't be any different, and we need to be proactive and agile in driving the development and insights and profiling of owners going forward. As Charlie Parker touched on, I am really delighted to say that as part of the agreed work streams and in collaboration with the BHA and the industry stakeholders, we are launching the Owner Services workstream. It's led by the ROA, and as I said, in collaboration with the BHA, and we'll be building the Customer Centre workstream. The Customer Centre. That will be for all racehorse owners, looking at data, segmentation of owners across the industry, and the experience that needs to be delivered to meet their needs and make the sport rewarding, but also aspirational for the future. The industry strategy was underpinned at the beginning as the ability to build long-term change through collaboration. Working with all stakeholders across the sport, this workstream will focus on proactive owner-led relationships, recognition of the investment owners make, understanding what drives that investment, and therefore creating true value for the owners. This is a significant step forward in building relationships and driving results for the sport, short, medium, and long term. Whilst we build this work stream, we completely recognise as a membership organisation there are significant improvements required across our communication channels, ensuring that owners are updated, that their opinions are sought, we are actively listening, and that the results of any discussions at industry tables, but also across the ROA, are recognised and communicated. And that needs to be embedded as part of the day-to-day business. And we've already started that. We're already openly engaging. We're making sure that we're accessible on and off the course at all times. So that will evolve and build as we go forward. I also understand that the benefits we offer to members are very much important as part of the reward mechanism. So we are working very closely with the racecourses and the RCA to continue to renew and revive the badge scheme. The Racehorse Owners Badge Scheme is a significant benefit available through the ROA membership. And through recent changes and challenges, we've heard firsthand how that's affected the owners. So we're listening and we are revisiting that with some good news due to come over the coming months. We also continue to evolve the existing benefits. As Stephen touched on, part of the racing digital rollout will look at streamlined registration fees through the BHA. And we are working alongside to create those complements of BHA discounts currently received, but across all owners' platforms coming into the registration. So we look forward to that rollout that will complement it. We've also got our third-party liability with thanks to Weatherby's Hamilton, who provide that currently. And we've also got Lysits, who provide the Racehorse Owners Compensation Scheme. It's also a significant benefit of the partnership that we hold with Tote, and we recognise how much support that they invest in the owners through the Owners Sponsorship Scheme. This directly benefits owners through income generated through advertising their logos on a race day. That also enables and it creates the opportunity for those owners to become VAT registered. So, as we touched on via Ken, we launched our very own VAT solution service. That was focused on, well, it is focused on excellent customer service and delivering options in the marketplace. We do look to continue to roll out new tiers of membership. We've started to expand from being a full membership only through to the Racegoers Club, but also expanding beyond to a primary membership, which enables existing new owners to actually be in touch with what's happening across the industry as part of our enhanced communication. This looks to actually track the owner's journey from the point they come into racing or involved in racing as a racing enthusiast, all the way to creating that aspirational and direction and signposting into the potential of owning a share or a percentage in a racehorse in the future. So we'll continue to evolve our benefits because we understand how important they are for owners. And one of those areas will look at more events and travel functionality over the coming months. The partnership that we have with Racing Welfare has gone from strength to strength, and it continues to support the teams that are looking after your horse's welfare and beyond. The funds raised by owners as part of this partnership have been critical to supporting that charity. So we've recognised elements that we will be working towards on behalf of owners, putting owners at the centre of the ROA journey and relationship. And we understand our membership does play a critical part of many owners' relationship with British racing. And we are dedicated to growing the engagement, developing our trusted role and responsibility, and delivering against the needs of our owners for the long-term future success of British racing.
Thanks, Louise. We'll now have some time for a few questions. So if anyone does have a question, please raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you, and also please ensure to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Kate Mills. I'm a racehorse owner. I also help Heroes Charity with retraining, rehoming retired racehorses and also working with special educational needs children. My question is, as an owner, this year in particular has been quite a struggle, as we all appreciate, with regards to the weather, but it's also not been helped from my perspective with a flat racehorse, which likes good ground, really, with the overzealous clerks of the course who will insist on watering even when rain is forecast. When the going says good to soft in places, watering to maintain. It seems to be an increasing issue that you're not allowed to have a good ground horse. We appreciate, obviously, nobody wants to see, rock hard ground out there and damage to horses. Of course we don't. But equally, if we're not going to be allowed good ground, we need to stop breeding good ground horses. Can you help? There's no consistency when we turn up. What is reported about the going on the ground is totally different to what is evident when you arrive. So we need some way to make sure there's consistency across the tracks and that they're not perhaps as overzealous as they have been so far.
There's probably a person in the audience who's better placed to answer this, Richard, than I am, but I will give it a go. I think it's obviously an issue. People are raising it. I think we have to work together, owners, racecourses, and the BHA, to ensure that this doesn't happen. Tom Goff is a board member of ours who is very convinced that if we continue to do this, we will damage the breed. That the type of horse that we should be breeding is not being offered the opportunities because of overwatering. And if he was here, he'd probably rabbit on now for about 20 minutes on the subject. But I think it's about collaboration and about working together between the BHA and the racecourses to ensure that, you know, if they have watered for safety reasons or whatever it is, that information is passed at a timely point to the trainer, so you know where you are. But as a strategy, it's something we have to look at within the BHA racing department to make sure that we aren't excluding those horses. It's not the same, but I had a 2-year-old running in the Group 3 today at Newmarket that we've just taken out because it's rained, and he needs good ground as well. So we're in the same boat. Thank you.
Yes, it's definitely a pet peeve of mine. So you're not on your own. I've been keeping records since 1991 of every time that the actual going based on the speed of the races compared with what the clerk of the course said. And some courses are a lot worse than others. Some, usually the larger courses which have got more money to spend on irrigation and what have you, tend to be better. But, you know, as Charlie has said, it's not something that's going to be fixed without a lot of discussion with these people who are trying to do the best that they can. But that didn't help me when I sent my horse to Wales to race on good to soft ground, and the ground was brown, and I got a bill for £400 for the horse going back. We entered the following week, course in the southeast, exactly the same thing happened. So it's just not, some, as I say, some are better than others, but it's not acceptable. I mean, we are, as the rest of my board colleagues will be sick of hearing me say, we are the people within the racing industry that puts money in without a serious expectation of getting a profit out of it. And we deserve more respect from those people in racing who are putting money in and getting a profit out of it than we actually get at the moment. So Charlie's absolutely right. It's something that needs to be addressed at the highest level. The BHA is the authority that runs racing, so they are the ones with the authority to make sure this happens.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any other questions?
Stephen Smith, formerly a director. Ken, thank you for explaining and commenting on this year's finances. I think the challenge is that actually there are 4 out of the last 5 years of losses, which have resulted in the balance going down from halving from 1.4 million to 700,000, which is significant. And I know that these have been tough times with COVID and the financial environment, but on the income line, membership has, peaked at 8,000. I'd be interested in where it has fallen to and what can be done. I mean, you've commented on some of the things you're doing, but I do also wonder whether actually the membership role and the political role of the organisation is not as prominent as it used to be. And I just wondered over that 4 or 5 year period on the cost line whether there were any extraordinary activities that have actually contributed to that loss. But also I want to say thank you for all your work. I know from when I was on the board with you, you worked tirelessly, so I apologise in the last 10 minutes of your time for asking this question.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, it's been a very difficult few years. Membership has been going down. For every 1,000 members that we lose, that's £250,000 of income. And you know, we've seen year after year, and the number at the moment is around about what, 6,250?
Yeah.
Yep. From that flag waving day when we actually hit 8,000 members, but it's been steadily going down since then. And it takes time to introduce the new activities that we tried to do to try and improve the income line. It's taken us the best part of 2 to 3 years to get the VAT solution into surplus. And, you know, Louise and, you know, Davina's there, who works on this, does my VAT return, I think, every quarter, and does a very good job. And you should encourage more and more people to take that up, because we are very efficient at doing that. But also getting involved in the membership tiers. You've got to discuss this with other organisations. Nothing happens quickly in the industry. And you therefore have to be patient and make sure that you can deal with it. And as I've said already, staff costs and salaries are such a significant part of our overall cost base. In order to try and get rid of those brackets, we could have got rid of virtually everybody, but there's no organisation to run everything for us. So it's been a phased basis of where we've got to, but I think we've now got, with Louise at the helm, who's been doing a really good job since she took over. Her attention to detail is absolutely first class, and we will be looking to try and make other savings. But we've done various other things. Which, I mean, we used to, for example, this event used to take place in London, have a fancy lunch, and probably would have cost us about, I don't know, 60 grand for that particular. We had to take a difficult decision to stop that. It was a very popular event. The ROA Awards is a brilliant night. But if we don't get sponsorship in and we don't get people to attend and take tables, then, you know, it's a challenge to try and break even. So there's a lot of activity going on to actually bottom out and bring things up again. And yes, you're right. Over the last 3-4 years, it's not been great, but the world has been a very challenging place. My own company, we had our board meeting on Tuesday morning, and there was a line in the papers that said, input cost prices are lower, but nowhere near like where they were 5 years ago. And that's how many businesses are having to face up to, is the pressures of inflation, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months, which have affected organisations. And there's a limit to how you can cut yourself to the bone in order to try and make sure that you're making a surplus. That's what we're aiming to do this year, and you'll need to judge those that are left on that in 12 months' time.
Can I just add into that around the membership and the proactive behaviours? I think, you know, as I highlighted, the communication for us as a membership organisation is paramount. It's critical, and it's probably an area we have not been as significantly involved in. Talking to our members, listening, understanding the needs and wants, the variety and sort of varied levels of ownership investment through from micro shares, shared ownership, through to top tier large ownership entities. There is a vast array of opinions there, and we need to be able to access that, talk to those owners, and actually demonstrate that we're actively listening. All of those parts of that credibility and behaviours that we will bring to the table have already started. We're out there. I'm listening to exactly why the ROA. It's coming back to that point that we are the owner stakeholder, and how we create that momentum and behaviours and change for all owners across racing. The insights and the data is just one part of it. Having that ownership support is really important. And that will come through unlocking transparency, discussions, collaboration. It's not one thing, but what we need to do is make sure you as owners and members know exactly what we're doing and what we stand for.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Julian Richard-Watson, Chairman of the Thoroughbred Group. Charlie, you mentioned the fact that the pain of taking money from core racing to go into Premier, and some money is being put back next year from the levy board. But it clearly is a serious issue going forward unless we can find a whole lot more money. And I think that it would be helpful for the ROA to support the idea that actually making racing at the top really successful, and let's hope some of the projects you've talked about come through, but making racing really successful at the top is what drives the interest in the sport. Without being unkind, a lot of the core racing doesn't do that. And so we have to work a system whereby we get as much as we can afford into the top level of racing, and make sure that that is the bit, the big meetings, the big fixtures that actually drive racing forward. And I know that's a difficult one for the ROA with its membership across the board, but I do feel that somewhere along the line we have to square that circle.
Yeah, and you know, as I mentioned, the the project that we have funded to some extent as the ROA in terms of exploring that in inward investment on a global basis for the top end of the flat is a clear demonstration that the organisation understands that and supports that approach. And I think my speech centred on that very heavily. That we believe that, but that has to fund the whole of the ecosystem. And if that is successful, then we are talking about a very few number of flat races that flat fixtures that would be attractive for inward international investment. That will not be National Hunt. That will not be core all weather or core turf flat. But whatever deal we do, those three elements of our sport have to be supported, because that is where the vast majority of owners, where horses, trainers, jockeys are plying their trade, and that is the lifeblood of the business. So we're 100% supportive of that initiative, partly led it, I guess, but we also need to protect the rest of the industry.
So Andrew Heatherton, and my question is about the racehorse owner's experience on race day, and it probably fits into two elements. The first is the music events. There are some really good courses. So York, they look smart, and same at Goodwood actually, where I've had experience this year. That the downside are the other extremes, where we have the bully boy fluorescent stab-vested stewards who are aiming for a fight. And of course, what happens is that you get that at those race meetings. So how can we as the ROA extol those courses that are in the bully boy tactics brigade to actually make the race day experience far more pleasurable for owners? They sometimes treat owners in the same bracket as the thugs that they're trying to control. And the other extreme is trying to take people to race day meetings. I had one experience where I was told, you're only allowed, so you can only bring people in if you've named them in advance. Well, I'm the owner, I'm entitled to 6 tickets, and who I bring, whether they're friends or I work with them, is my business. I want 6 tickets, please give them to me. How can we get that message across to courses, or am I wrong, that I can bring who I like to watch my horse?
No, thank you very much. So sort of taking your first point in hand is we have had sort of a level of engagement around the music nights and the behaviours and the sort of running of those and the courses in that. Obviously, one element of the experience does focus around the ROA accreditation scheme, and there is that when owners have runners on course, they can feed back directly, which does inform, it does now go into a published league table at the end of the year, which is based on sort of the accreditation via Visit England scoring, but also the owner's feedback. I think what I would encourage, and again, it comes back to that communication and active listening, is where there are challenges, because the one benefit that we should take as a sport out of this is owners will go racing far more times outside of just having a runner to enjoy the event, passionate about racing, and we should be actively encouraging that. And elements such as the music evenings shouldn't be, putting owners off being present. The other part, we actually meet now directly with the racecourses. We have clear engagement and channels that we can communicate and highlight these parts, and this is something that we'll be picking up. We've also had another challenge around the badge scheme and music nights, where actually some of those music nights are taken off the list, the fixture list availability, because it is a music night, and actually the owners don't want to stay for the music. So we're looking at those kind of opportunities around that. So it definitely is something, and again, it comes back to communicating, active listening, and looking at the changes, and we've already commenced what 2025 badge scheme will look like from that perspective. So we're definitely doing it.
I think the naming of your guests comes from, that was introduced at COVID, where everybody had to put names down, whether you went to a pub or a restaurant. Many of them were aliases from memory, but it came from there, and it might be a hangover of that. But the racecourses, we all want the data. I mean, they've got businesses to run, so they, in theory, they want to know who's there, and therefore they can then market to them. So I think it came in because of that pandemic, and there's probably some courses still on that road.
But you are entitled to arrive. If that course gives you
no.
the 6 badges and you would like to arrive and bring them along. I think, there's a marketing option, as Charlie said, and what was introduced coming out of COVID. What we shouldn't underestimate is the ability as the industry, but also from the ROAs, to drive the journey for those guests that you're bringing along. It potentially is their introduction. Myself and a colleague, Kate Freeman, who have been leading on the owners' work stream, we have been really interested in how owners engage or are brought into racing. And a critical gatekeeper that is often overlooked by us as the sport is actually the owner. They introduce owners upon owners into racing by doing exactly what you're talking about. So actually, how can we capture that information, but incentivise and engage and grow that audience, which actually from your perspective would be complementary because you're bringing somebody into the sport, they're welcomed, they're engaged. And then on the other side, we then take them through to a journey. And it may take us 5 years to convert to a potential ownership, but it's something we need to be looking at.
Can I just add, with my X years of experience involved in this, one of the early things that I did when I joined the ROA board, before we used Visit England and Visit Scotland, was that members of the board went round the courses and tried to encourage the racecourse general managers to improve the offering. Now, at the very start, I would say that Ayr were the only one that got a tick in the box. And they've consistently, since then, apart from COVID, done very well in the offering which you get. But I would say now that all 5 Scottish courses and the courses in Northumberland and Cumbria, and I even include Hexham in that, where it used to be a cup of tea and a biscuit, who are now serving a 2-course buffet meal. And it's a matter of engaging with the general managers to say, this is the lifeblood. You don't get media rights if owners and trainers don't send horses to your racecourse. And therefore, you've got to look after them as best as possible. And I think that's been spread across from other things I've heard from my colleagues on the board who were involved in it in recent years as well, that's improved markedly. And the accreditation system that we now have has brought the standards up with the racecourses over the last 5 years in particular, so that the owner experience is much, much better than when it was 10 years ago.
Are there any further questions?
Hi, this is just a quick aside, not a question, you'll be glad to hear. Tansy Chalice, Chief Exec of the Racing Foundation. It's just bringing some attention to the point that Charlie made about social licence and the next generation. It's just a very quick aside that we're hosting a conference next Wednesday dealing specifically with social licence to operate, the relevance of horse in sport, and how do we better engage the next generation. So it's obviously a bit too late for tickets, but we would be more than happy to share the slides and any video footage with the ROA for you to give access to your members if that would be useful. It doesn't answer all the questions, but it gives you a start. And we have the McDonald's former CSR and sustainability lead doing our opening speech, so we can learn from other industries as well, but more than happy to give you access for your members.
Thank you, Tansy. That would be great. And I think these are the elements of collaboration that we've got some fantastic channels to communicate with owners, and we can actually use that to spread a wider message of the really good work that does take place in this sport, rather than a negative headline, actually focus on the good work that happens.
Well, if there aren't any more other questions at all, I'll hand back over to Louise, who will share her closing thoughts.
Thank you very much, all. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and confirm that the 2024 Racehorse Owners Association Annual General Meeting is now concluded. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.